Information Risk with David Loshin, powered by Insight Jam.
Hey, it's Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to episode 1 of our Information Risk podcast with David Loshin. David is a data strategy consultant. He's president of Knowledge Integrity, and he's also a Solutions Review expert. And we're really happy to have him as an expert and able to talk about this topic. And we're going to use this episode to dig into this topic a little bit. And also then spool out a whole series of deeper dives with examples. But David, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to it. Everything that we're doing here at Insight Jam is revolving around getting this kind of expert content and really getting it more accessible through these types of video podcasts. So we appreciate you being available to do it as well. And while we have this first episode, and I love the term information risk, I want to just take a deep dive, or actually maybe not so deep, but maybe just have you take a little walk through what you would consider to be the categories of information risk, and we can kind of begin to, like I said, maybe level set around the elements that we'll start to break down in subsequent episodes.
So thanks. Actually, maybe I'll even rewind that a little bit and start with what motivated my thinking about bundling a lot of these things together under the concept of information risk in the first place. And for that reason, I'd have to give you a little bit of background of the work that I've done for the last 30 years or so, which largely started with data quality and data cleansing and the activities that an organization might do when they're collecting data sets that they want to be able to analyze or put them into some kind of analytical platform, and found that there are flaws or missing data. And I spent a lot of time looking at this whole concept of data cleansing versus data quality, and what were sort of the distinctions between an organization that seeks to modify data to shoehorn it into an expectation of what is quote unquote correct or accurate or of high quality, versus understanding what are the root causes associated with data that didn't meet some level of expectations. What I've found, and particularly I would say this over the last 5 years or so, is that with a broader scope associated with understanding how organizations are using data, and I think a large part of this was inspired by the lowered barriers that organizations have to doing data analysis, especially with the use of cloud services and analytical platforms and those types of things, and even today with the emergence of these generative AI systems that are freely, quote unquote freely available for organizations to use. There's all sorts of different aspects of how people make use of data that can lead to unexpected or unintended consequences that they don't really understand. And so data quality just becomes one artifact or one facet of what I would refer to as information risk. So to get back to the answer to your question, I think there's a number of different categories of information risk, and I categorize them in terms of what the impacts are, or how the impacts are manifested in the organization. So I'll take a deep breath and kind of give you a chance to noodle on that for a second while I organize my thoughts for the next piece.
Yeah, no, this is an incredibly relevant conversation to be having, because ultimately information is just exploding in every different direction, and it's exploding in ways that are hard to capture, let alone control. And so you're ending up with not kind of your classic data, as we would all think about it, in kind of neat rows and columns, but in this, it's more contextual. It's more it's being captured in different ways and sources, and just the mere capture of it, I think is incredibly tricky. But then obviously once you've captured it, it becomes risk available.
Well, so that's kind of a good jumping point, right? Which is what do I really mean by information risk? And I think what I'm trying to say is it's any scenario or any business use case or usage scenario where flawed or missing or some other negative aspect associated with data or information could lead to some kind of business impacts. And I can walk through these different categories. So, the first category I would talk to is operations risk. And these are somewhat mirrored along the lines of the types of risks that organizations examine, from a financial standpoint as well. So that's intentional, so that we can examine how to link information use to underlying business usage scenarios. So operations risk would be some risk that low quality data or missing data could jeopardize successful operations of an organization, or, for example, transaction processing. So, a very simple example is if you were to be providing a stream of information that is supporting a manufacturing line, and that manufacturing line is keeping track, say, of different sensors that are along the production cycle that involve air quality or temperature, and there perhaps might be one of these sensors fails, and so the temperature monitor, maybe instead of reporting that the temperature of products coming off the line is above a certain threshold, it's actually continuing to report the same incorrect value that it has been reporting since the system failed. And so we've got bad information coming into the environment. The risk there is that temperatures are increasing to a point where the quality of the product that's coming out is significantly impacted because things are melting along the line. That's an example of an operations risk.
Yeah. So this is, I know you refer to this as a low utility rating type of risk. What do you mean by, or the data has a low utility rating? How do you mean that?
Yeah. So and I've come out of the habit of calling, referring to the quality of data, but rather I start looking at the perspectives in terms of utilization and data use and use for the intended purposes. And the reason for that is that in different contexts, the quality of the information is perceived to be some objective measure of the data, while in reality it's subjective to the needs of the data users. And so if I were to have some objective system that establishes data quality scores, that's not necessarily going to provide the right information back to the data users to whether it does or does not meet their needs. So if we think about it in terms of utilization, it actually helps to provide the context, which is it's not just the objective quality of the data, but its suitability for a particular use. And so temperature information associated with the production line is not relevant to reporting on the number of items that came off the line. It is relevant to the ongoing operations and the ability to monitor the quality of the outcome. And so I hate using quality. It seems to imply some kind of value judgment associated with the data, and in reality, it's based on the interpretation and interpretability of that information that is produced by that data that is relevant to the user. So we can talk about a utility rating or utilization rating that's associated with a particular business use case and context, and that may differ depending on who's using that data.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to do as we roll forward is dig in on some of these specific categories of information risk in subsequent episodes. But let's keep going down the list. So we've got operations risk. What's next?
So I'm glad that you asked that question about utility rating, because it leads into this next category, which is what I'm referring to as awareness or usability risk, which is a risk that the data users are unaware of or unable to properly use the information that's necessary for optimally addressing their business use case. And really, this leads into this a more general question, which is who are the data users and what are their expectations, and how can the organization, from an information management perspective, be able to meet those needs? And a lot of it has to do with raising awareness of data literacy, because as we have lowered the barrier to analytics, we've got a broader array of communities of users, some of whom are experts, and some of whom they have been given the key to a fantastic new kingdom, and they make use of the data that they see is available to them, but they don't always necessarily know how to best use that data, or even which data sets are available for them to use.
And this is the democratization of data, right? That everybody talks about, this idea of self-service tools.
Yeah, exactly. But the issue with democratization is that not everybody understands, and this goes back to this whole question of utility. They don't understand what the requirements are for using that data, and so anybody can go to an open data provider. So the government provides, or many governments, federal, state, agencies, et cetera, they all provide some kind of open access to certain data sets. But those data sets are not, materialized in a fantastical world where everybody can expect that it is of highest quality and meets everybody's needs. There are people behind the production of those data sets, which means there's opinions about what data elements go into it and which data elements are restricted, and how those the data sets are produced, and when those data sets are produced. So you might have this expectation that, yes, the federal government publishes such and such an open data set, and I can make use of that for whatever purpose I want, without even realizing that the people who built that data set did so under duress. They didn't really want to build it, and so they created an extraction process, but they had no controls over the governance of that process, and so the data has got flaws in it.
All right. So risk number 3.
I would call that opportunity risk, which at a high level is the risk of missing business opportunities because of missing data or flawed information, or flawed processes associated with information. So I give you a quick example of that as well. We had a client that we worked with. One of the processes that their salespeople were doing was examining characteristics of their clients to determine whether they were suitable for a particular product offering. However, the sales associates or the sales representatives, they had access to the master customer list, but they didn't trust it. They felt that the data was out of date, or it wasn't complete. And so when they were trying to do their determination of the characteristics, they felt, well, maybe this customer does fall into the category, or maybe the customer doesn't. And so I'm not going to try to sell this customer a particular product because I don't know for sure that they are suitable to meet the requirements for that product.
Oh, interesting.
So they didn't not sell it to them, but they didn't not sell it to them, meaning they just didn't do anything, which means that's the missed opportunity, which is, for example,
it's a missed commission.
Yeah, it's a missed commission. And so there's let's say you want to give a loan to a person, and you ran a credit check and the credit check came back and said, well, not really sure, can't really convince you that this person is creditworthy. And the salesperson would say, well, if you can't convince me, then I'm not going to put the corporate, money at stake.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to wait to see next week to see whether the credit score comes back more definitively.
This is a risk category we're definitely going to dig into in subsequent episodes. I'll have some examples on this one, and we can walk through those. So there's 3. What do you got for number 4?
So I'm going to bump. Here's the problem with this one is that the use of the term, and you'll see when I tell you what the term is, already puts people into a certain mindset, and they don't realize that there's actually a mountain of other aspects associated with this. So I call it cyber risk, which bluntly is the risks of unauthorized use of protected information or sensitive information. Now that the problem there is that's the tip of the iceberg, because when I say unauthorized use of protected information, there's a billion different ways that one can unauthorizedly use protected information. So, immediately people's opinions jump to, oh, you said cyber risk, cybersecurity, phishing, identity theft.
Yeah, this is a big category.
It's a huge category. Let me give you an example where this goes beyond the immediate reaction of thinking about something like identity theft. You are a subscriber to some kind of streaming video service. You like to watch these things on your TV or even on your computer monitor. And when you go searching to look for something to watch, you'll run a search. It'll pop up some suggestions. You'll choose to watch some TV show. And then when you're done watching that one, maybe you have streamed 16 episodes of it. Now you're done. Now you'll do another search, etc. Let's say the organization that is the streaming video provider, they for sure are monitoring what kind of shows you're watching because they want to maintain you as a subscriber, right? And so if you choose, shred or sell my home, why did I buy this house and tiny houses and fix my, those types of shows. If you're watching those types of shows, it'll find other shows like that will supposedly meet your preference expectations. So clearly, you watch those types of shows. You're interested in shows about home remodeling. Now, that makes sense because you expect that this streaming service is going to be collecting information about your viewing preferences and provide you with additional recommendations for your continued viewing pleasure, right? However, what you don't realize is that when you agreed to let the company monitor everything that you are doing so that they can analyze it to provide a better service, they're actually collecting your data and they're selling it to Home Depot or Lowe's or the hardware stores. And they're selling it to real estate agents and they're selling it to construction companies because they think, okay, well, this is a person who is continually watching shows about doing renovations. Clearly that's on this person's mind. And so what they've done is they have made use of the terms of service that you have allowed them to make use of your information. And they've made use of your information in a way that you didn't expect that they were going to do it. And you don't really have any control over that. So that is what I might call it.
Nor are you compensated for it where they are.
Exactly.
It's your information. You're not getting compensated for it, but they are.
Right.
This is one of my
now, feats. Right. So here's a question, which is did those terms of service actually allow that organization to be able to do that? And in some cases, it does. And in some cases, it doesn't. But that's where, so if you are the subscriber, of course you're aware of that risk. But if you're the organization, the question is not, okay, am I allowed to do it or not? But rather, what's the risk that there's going to be a class action suit against our organization that's going to bankrupt us because somebody realized that we are making use of the information in a way that they didn't expect it to be used. So that's an example of cyber risk.
Yeah, and again, this is a huge topic and one we're going to dig into a lot over over subsequent episodes. I'm glad you put it on the list. There's more on the list as well, which we will get to, but I'd like to take a quick break, and we'll come back with the rest of the list after a short message.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today. Now back to the show.
We are back with David Loshin, and we're walking through the categories of information risk. We've gotten through 5. We've got some more to go. We just covered cyber risk. David, what's next on the list?
So what's great about cyber risk is that it dovetails with the next one, which is what I refer to as compliance risk, which is the risk of being subject to penalties for not complying with externally defined mandates for either for regulatory compliance or complying with industry standards. Or rules about protecting sensitive information, and the reason that those two kind of go hand in hand is that one is the cyber risk kind of leads into questions about legality and legal proceedings, while compliance risk is kind of a management associated with avoiding the negative aspects of noncompliance. Right? It's if I can do something and do it in a way where I'm not subject to the penalties, that's something that the organization would look at. But the problem here, and this is a big problem, is that the people who write, laws, regulations, industry standards, those people are either lawyers or industry experts or policy wonks, none of whom have any type of depth of experience when it comes to information management or data management. So you can have a law that's passed. I'll give you an example. I'll leave it a little fuzzy though. I used to work on a project that was associated with a federal database. It was a federally mandated database. Now, what do I mean by federally mandated? The law actually stated the federal government will set up an agency to build a database that collects information from the states and provides accessibility to the states to be able to meet the needs of their state internal health and human services initiatives. Meaning the intent was we want to be able to share data from the states among the other states. And since the federal government is essentially the clearinghouse proxy for the states, the federal government would create some kind of platform that would allow for information to be shared between states. But that's not what they said. They said that the federal government had to build a database. And that's in the law, which means that 5 years from now, when people are less frequently using actual databases and trying to coordinate updates from 50 plus data contributors into a single unified representation, but rather providing perhaps data virtualization or data federation or cloud-based interactions or some other technology that provides better response in a more predictable and trustworthy way, this government agency is still going to be bound to collecting data sets from the states and putting it into a database because that's what the law says.
This is a great topic, and I'm glad you put it on the list because let's face it. I mean, with the pace at which technology is trucking forward now with artificial intelligence and it taking massive data sets and creating new data on the fly. I mean, governments, as much as they're trying, there's no way they can keep pace here.
You're right, because the pace of the cadence at which government works is different than the cadence at which technology works.
It will never be as fast as the way, and it's only falling further behind by the second. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, technology, as fast as it's been advancing, is now hit the NOS button and is literally leaving visibility.
Right. The acceleration of technology development widely, it's not just the pace, it's the acceleration of that pace. And
exactly.
And to be able to keep up with that, there has to be some level of nimbleness, you might call it. But to kind of roll it back to this whole question about compliance, a lot of this is not just about, okay, here's a government, and the government passed some rule or some law, and you need to comply with it. We've got this complexity of multiple governments that are passing similar laws with different requirements. And the obvious one, and this is one I'm sure we will be talking about multiple times over upcoming episodes, is data privacy laws. Because, for example, you've got data privacy laws that are being defined in different mega jurisdictions. So the European Union's got a data privacy, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And in the United States, you've got states that are I guess you'd call them they're not the mega.
California's
right? They're
got
not the
one.
federal. California's got one. Virginia's got one. Colorado's got one.
Right, and then you add Canada. Canada has their own. And
Australia. And in fact, there's like 100 different political jurisdictions that have a data privacy law.
Again, this is a great topic, and it's almost like we could just spend the rest of this podcast going through that, because it's not only, it's almost impossible to enforce what they're creating.
That's exactly the point, which is that
compliance that is almost impossible to adhere to, let alone for them to even understand whether you're violating it.
Well, this goes back. See, this is where it dovetails with the awareness and usability risk, which is, if I want to be as careful as possible, and I want to make sure that I am complying with every single data privacy law, then I would either have to anonymize most of the data that I'm using, or I would have to stop using lots of it to the point where it becomes unusable. I can't analyze data if I can't analyze customer requirements or customer recommendations if I can't get access to customer data. And I can't, make a recommendation to Doug if Doug has been sanitized out of the system.
You're gonna get me spun up, and I'm gonna drag this thing out. I'm gonna pull the plug on this, because we're gonna get into this in great detail in subsequent episodes, because this one is a hot tamale, and we're gonna I'm gonna put this one on the front burner. But we'll get to that in subsequent episodes. Let's go.
For sure.
Go to the next. Let's go to the next one on the list.
So you have been reading my mind, because you brought up this whole question about AI, generative AI, and these large language models. You made reference to that, and the question about protection of sensitive information. And the next one is what I refer to as bias risk, which is a risk that flawed or biased data that's used for analytical models can lead to skewed or unfair results. And this again, I can link this to my prior example, which was I talked about credit checks, and one of the potential failures of something like a credit analysis process is that the data that it's trained on is biased, because it's only based on histories associated with the people who got credit. And if you want to talk to communities of people who typically don't apply for credit, then they're not going to have a history, and so their information is not going to get folded into the model, and they'll be immediately bounced out.
I love this one. This is a really subtle one that is like only going to get more once it's in the models and in the mix, as AI starts to have its kind of magnitudal effect, it only exposes it more, right? So this is a great one to have on the list.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to trigger a lot of conversations about this.
Well, it's highly
especially,
controversial. It gets into ethics. It gets into all kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, let me give you an example, which was the premise of one of these TV shows that my family and I were watching called American Auto, I think. And I actually think this might have had roots in a real situation, which was the premise of the show is that one of the characters is asked to join the design team for a new car. That the car is a self-driving automobile, and during a demo, it's supposed to be able to demonstrate that when a person walks across the street, the car has a sensor in it and is able to detect that somebody's walking across the street and automatically brake. But the person that is in the demo is a person of color, and the car doesn't stop and actually hits him. And the reason for that, it presumably in the show, is that the training of the AI model was only done with white people, so it was only able to recognize white people because that's the way that the model was trained. And it's not far fetched. It's actually a reasonable expectation that given a training set of information that has an inherent bias in it, whether or not the people who have created that, either the training set or the model itself, know it. The way the models work is that they are trained on the information that they're being provided. So if there's biased data that goes into the training of these models, it's going to have integrated failure points when the model's being used. And you were right. That brings up a whole bunch of ethical and moral questions associated with our current hysteria with generative AI.
Yeah, again, I love this one. We had a lot of conversation during our Inside Jam Live in December around this topic, and how you can manage it to the greatest extent. And I think the initial kind of conclusion is that it's always going to exist to some extent. And so what are the implications with regard to that? And so again, thanks for putting it on the list, because we will have a deeper conversation about that in subsequent episodes as well.
I think there's a lot to drill down into that.
Yeah, I think that was number 7.
I kind of lost count there, but I'm happy to go on to my next one.
That's number 7, but I think there's some more beyond that. What do you got next on the list?
Well, so what I refer to as reputation risk, which is a risk that flawed or missing information or bad information can lead to a negative public opinion of your organization.
Interesting.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with some of these other ones. So, for example, if you recall, this must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, the Sony breach. So Sony, the entertainment company, there was a cyber breach, data breach, and it wasn't just to steal credit card information. They were able to break into all sorts of information that had a lot of what you might call corporate lore, I'll use the term secrets, maybe in quotes, associated with who were what projects they were doing and who were the celebrities or the stars that they were bringing into these projects and how much those people were being paid, and aspects of that were relatively surprising, such as female lead actresses were being paid less than male lead actors.
I remember this,
but there was no reason for that. So so that's an example where it's embarrassing to the company. Well, first of all, they should be embarrassed that they're doing that in the first place, but it's even more embarrassing when lots of people know about it. So that's an example of reputation risk. Other risks like that are when a company, a security company is reported to have some kind of backdoor in their software tool that allows there to be a cyber breach as well. I mean, I don't have any examples of that, but that would be a nice contrived example.
Yeah, no, I think we're gonna. I think we can come up with all kinds of good examples to dig in on this one. I mean, this is a This is a good salacious one. I like it. I think
Yes.
we'll we'll get the crack research team here at Solutions Review on the job and come up with some examples for us to dig in on as we go forward.
So yeah, and these types of things have major impacts. So for example, if you're a public company and there is some event, like here, I'll give a good example. Let's say you're a company that builds airplanes, and the door of your of one of your airplanes flies off in the middle of a flight. Just to kind of be timely with this, that raise questions about the quality of the product that your company is producing, but it's manifested in terms of stock price. And I suggest that if you did a little bit of research, you'd probably see that that the day after this thing happened, the value of the stock went down, and if the value of the stock went down, the
Sure.
value of the company went down. And that's could be in, hundreds of thousands and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good one. All right, we have one more on the list, and then let's go through that one. Then we'll maybe take another break and get into some questions.
Sure. So the last one, and this one kind of is a bundle it's a bucket for all the other ones, is what I would call strategic risk, which is a risk that is associated with adverse business decisions that are based on flawed data or flawed analysis. It's like, yes, we do want to add another carriage onto our horse and carriage line because our research says that horses and carriages are up and coming in the transportation system. Well, if you made that decision, you probably did that with data that is out of date. You might say, well, it was from a survey that took place in 1906. So yeah, I mean, the data was there and it was accurately collected. So yeah, but it is a flawed analysis, or it uses data that doesn't meet a particular set of needs, and so people are making bad decisions.
Yeah, no, this is going in every which way. Not only flawed analysis of old data, but potentially flawed analysis of current data that is coming from, maybe another one of your risks from a source that can't be trusted. Right? I mean, now you're talking about multiple levels of risk, right? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is good stuff. And again, this list, and we'll recap it as we go along. But this is the kind of structure that I think is going to make this series so valuable, is that we can really kind of knock out each of these. And I really like what you've done, and I think it really does get down to a neat breakdown of this broader information risk category, which again is a term I haven't heard used, but that I appreciate you bringing to us and allowing us to dig in on. So with that, we're going to take another quick break, and then we'll come back and David and I will go over some questions about information risk in general, and then and maybe a little more into the specifics of the topic.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. And if you prefer to listen, please rate and review the Insight Jam podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right, we're back. We just recapped kind of a breakdown of the categories of information risk with David. And now, David, I'd like to just dig in a little bit more about the term information risk and how you're thinking about information risk management, because it sounds to me like it's reminiscent of what we would have traditionally called data governance, and I think that's a term that's still used quite a bit. Can you dig in a little bit about how you differentiate the two?
Sure. That's actually a great question, and I think, and it's relevant because I see a lot of organizations are increasingly starting data governance practices or trying to mature their data governance practice. I think what data governance has tried to look at is a kind of a combination of good data management practices that are intended to oversee the assurance of high quality, highly available data resources, and from you might say from a data management or from an IT perspective, the goal there is can we build a practice that has the same level of rigor with respect to assuring that the corporate data, I'll use the term artifact or thing or objects that are to be used are managed in a way such that there's some oversight and control to make sure that they're being used in the right way. And that's kind of what I would say governance is to some extent. When I think about information risk, I'm not thinking about it's kind of turned inside out. Governance is focusing internally on, how do we do what we do, while the risk is what happens if we don't do what we're supposed to do, or what happens if we don't realize we're not doing the things that we're supposed to do. And so that's where the bridge might be actually is saying identifying the risks leads to investigation of the root causes that create the vulnerabilities to those risks. And then data governance would be the process of shutting down those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it's almost like organizations these days are creating a data governance practice or a data governance department even, or some control around data governance internally, almost as a repository or a place where they can present the accountability or deliver the accountability. Or
so
do you follow what I'm saying? So
yes,
the information risk is there, and they're looking for a place that they can say, hey, you guys are now in charge of keeping us out of trouble.
So that would be my expectation, but I'm not really sure that the intent is always lined up with that expectation, because very often a data quality initiative or a data governance program is triggered by some acute problem. So I'll give an example of one place that I worked with. There was it was a financial institution. They had some accounts in that institution that managed billions of dollars. There was one event that took place where one particular client, who was not a multi-billionaire, but rather a thousandaire, had a very, very bad customer experience and complained about it to his brother-in-law, who happened to be the manager of the retirement system for some massive global company, who is one of those multi-billion-dollar clients, who then called, so that guy called the president of the financial institution and said, we're going to pull our money out if you don't fix this problem. And it boiled down to being some kind of data quality problem because there were duplicate records somewhere and the names got mixed up and accounts got messed up and whatever. But the reaction there is, okay, well, we have a problem. I've now identified that as a data quality problem, so we need a data quality solution. And then the next thing you know is they're interviewing data quality tool vendors, and they're looking at how do we make the choice of which of these vendors provides the best product, et cetera. But they're not looking at the problem. They're looking at the solution, but it's not really a solution. It's just a patch. And that's because they don't look at it in the context of the risk.
Yeah. So let's let's revisit data governance just for a second and get your take on this, because as I mentioned, it seems to me like data governance, it certainly has been emerging over the last decade as in response to obviously the massive amounts of data that are being captured and the regulatory and compliance issues that now are presented by you having access and capturing all of this data. But can you dig in a little bit about how organizations think about data governance? I mean, are they building data governance practices, or are they building data governance operations that are kind of the umbrella controller of all data, or is it more bifurcated than that, and it's more siloed than that in terms of data governance?
So I think it's even a little more complicated than that. I think that to understand why, you have to roll back to the motivations for why organizations do data governance. And some of them do it because they truly believe that there is a good practice in providing some level of oversight and control over the use of information. And they try to do it in any way that feeds into ensuring usability of the data in the way that is most applicable. There are some organizations that do it the same, based on what I had just described, which was some acute problem and some large consulting company that is already embedded in the organization says, oh, you need data governance, and by the way, we sell data governance. We'll help you build a data governance practice. It's going to cost you $XD million, but we'll do this and we'll get it done in 3 years. And then that is just adding on to their, like extending it out the tap that they are, hammering into that bucket, into that barrel to try to extract more money from their client. But what they do is they deliver a system, or they deliver a product, but they don't deliver the holistic perspective, which is what are the processes that are associated with good data governance practices, and how does the organization need to change in order to make those practices actually work. So that, I would say, is a second bucket. Then you've got the third bucket, which is I'm the leader of an organization in some industry, and I was at some meeting where I saw that the leaders of the other organizations within my own industry are starting a data governance practice, and since they are doing it, then we should be doing it also. So we're going to do that, and the outcome of those last two are there's a perceived need for a thing. So we're going to go out and get that thing. And once we've gotten that thing, we assume that it actually solves whatever problems that thing was intended to solve.
It's an evolving category of solution, and actually a solutions review would cover a lot of solution providers who are delivering a data governance solution, and it's, I think oftentimes it is very much a response to, why don't we have this, and let's get something that is ready to go out of the box. But I'm curious, as we have a few more minutes here, to kind of move away a little bit from that and toward how you think organizations should start to manage that information risk that we've presented, and if they are already, how are they doing that?
So, thank you for asking that question. This is a challenge I've been trying to work with my clients over the last couple of years, is to switch their perspective from the need to go out and buy a solution to understanding what the problems are. And it seems very obvious, but it's actually becomes quite complicated because it involves a horizontal perspective across the organization in two different dimensions. The first is across the lines of business, to get a real understanding of how information is used. And by the way, when I say information, what I mean is, and you would say, well, data and information, are they the same thing? What I mean by information is the production of some kind of actionable resource that's based on data. So I can have lots of data, but the data isn't actionable unless I can take it and cast it in some kind of framework that leads into understanding something. So that's why I talk about information, and so the first dimension is what are all the businesses, what are the information products they are using that they rely on, and what are the potential failure points in the production of those products that could lead to these types of vulnerabilities. The second dimension is going across the different domains where information can have an impact. So, let me give an example. I can have an organization that both makes products and sells products. So the line of business that is in the production process, they make use of data that is informing what they should make and how they should make it. And different data in the organization is being used to inform the sales associates how to sell those products. So that's across different lines of business or different business units. The other dimension is cyber risk. There's a potential there's potential backdoors in some of the software tools that are being used that allow for somebody to breach the environment and get access to data. It's not limited to one particular line of business. It hits all of them. So those are two different dimensions, and most organizations don't have a person positioned in the organization to understand both how information is used and where information is used, and the processes by which that information is created from the different source data sets. So long answer to a short question. To be able to address information risk management, you need to have a different perspective on how information is a resource, and how to best understand where the vulnerabilities exist. And so what we've been doing, what I've been doing is putting together a framework for essentially doing an assessment that asks the right questions and says, where is data being used? How is it being used? Who's using it? What are their perspectives on the quality of that data? What are their perspectives on the usability and other aspects, et cetera? And to come up with a report that says, here's the things that are the most critical in terms of information use, and here are some of the vulnerabilities that exist. And then using that as the next step is to then say, then how does that feed into all the different remediation frameworks associated with managing information as a core resource in the organization?
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to our next episode, which we will be spinning out every couple of weeks. We'll dig into all the various categories of information risk that David outlined earlier. And we're also going to, really dive into some classic examples that we can really kind of use as a framework for really understanding all of what's happening here. I'm reminded of a term that just is kind of like right in front of me around that we don't use anymore, and we use a lot of data and data analytics. We use data integration, data storage, data governance. But we used to actually, when we first started Solutions Review, we used to have a category called business intelligence. And honestly, I think a lot of this starts to fall underneath that idea, and it's kind of that same delineation you make around data and information. It's really it really comes down to what a company is trying to deliver is the best possible outcome from all of this data that they're capturing, and trying to avoid the risk. And so I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Anyway, David, we're going to wrap it up there. You can connect with David. We'll always have his contact information in our posting notes. Anytime you want to connect with David, he is available to have conversations like this. He's a very successful and very sought after independent consultant. And if you have more questions that you'd like to talk to David about, we would encourage you to connect directly. If you would just like to see what David is writing about and maybe connect in a different way, you can come to insightjam.com. And David has a space along with all of our other solutions review experts at Insight Jam, and you can connect with them there. And also just see all the other things that are available at insightjam.com. But David, looking forward to going forward with you on this. I love the idea of talking about information risk. Thanks for making this happen. And I appreciate the time that you've spent really outlining this.
No, this is great. I'm looking forward to our other conversations. I've been talking nonstop about these topics for a short time now, and I would really love to get people's feedback on this and how they understand what this might mean within their own organizations.
Well, again, we're looking to grow our viewership and certainly being able to leverage your prominence as we build out the Insight Jam. So again, thanks very much.
Thanks.